Well, hey there, and welcome to Surprise Me, Joel, with your host, Joel Zaslofsky. Let's turn the dial and narrow the field together, shall we? I'm grateful to be back with you for another episode. Thanks so much for your time and attention right now. All right, let's get into the nature of consciousness, how to tune into your intention and increase your awareness of even the teeny tiny smallest things. This episode features my wonderful friend, Justin Baker, who I've known since we met at a local gathering right around 2014. I have tried to integrate Justin into various social circles and parts of my life since then, and here's the latest attempt for your listening pleasure. This one starts rather philosophical, and it does get highly practical. But for my money, or I guess more importantly, my attention, the overall way of thinking and spiritual approach we discuss is the best part. Justin's a teacher, guide, and learning researcher, and likes to say he helps people who aspire to do good do more of it by accessing their highest potential. He's well on his way of doing that for me, and there's a chance he can do it for you too. We discussed consciousness from a light of awareness looking out to the fractal layers of batness, dogness, and Joelness. That's going to make sense to you when you listen, I promise. We also explored the one power source that everything plugs into, intuition as a somatic antenna, Justin's 3 a.m. vision of seeing a friend's future daughter before she was even conceived. Whoa, I know. Why consciousness and the English language are fundamentally a bad match. Why every indigenous culture on Earth used sound to shift awareness and attentional capacity. Plus, how to reconnect to self, community, and the living natural world as the antidote to modern restlessness. If you dig this episode, make sure to listen to my follow-up bonus episode with Justin, where we talk about how I integrated a psilocybin experience he facilitated with me. Let's get to the conversation. Here we go. Welcome, Justin. It's all kinds of groovy to be having this chat with you, my friend.
Happy to be here, Joel, as always.
This is unscripted for the most part, but before I reached out to you, I said, hey, is there anything in particular that maybe you want to cover in some shape, size, flavor? And you're like, yeah, consciousness would be cool, along with maybe a couple other things. So I figured we'd start with something simple, like the nature of consciousness, because what can be more simple than the nature of consciousness?
Yeah, just start with a nice light topic. Sure.
I have the voice of my friend Heather in the back of my mind right now, which says, define your terms. Meaning when we use a word, let's make sure that we're both using it in a similar way. What to you is consciousness?
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I needed to do my homework before this podcast. Okay. Let's start with basics. There is a sense when I look out on the world from inside of this body that there is some light of awareness that is looking out and knows that it is somehow a little bit separate from what's out there. What is this light that grants me the sense that I'm looking out? The metaphor a lot of the Eastern philosophers use is something like a light that is shedding some visibility into the darkness, and that illuminates experience, right? There's no reason, for instance, that we shouldn't just be like an amoeba that is out there seeking food, seeking sustenance, exchanging oxygen and air with the atmosphere. There's no reason we have to be aware that the lights have to be on for any of that biological stuff to happen, right? But there is a light on. We are aware that we exist for some reason. And that is how most of the ancient philosophers and even the current philosophers, in my understanding, have come to define consciousness. Makes sense to me also.
I heard you use the word I. Is consciousness something that we experience individually and collectively? Is it more of a unifying force versus like, is there a fractal nature to consciousness?
Okay, short answer is yes.
Uh-huh.
The I think the starting point for asking the question, if we're going down that kind of epistemological rabbit hole that your friend Heather is suggesting, right? Is that the common experience we all have inside these modern bodies, especially in our modern culture, is an individual experience. That there is an I that is somehow aware. And when you start to expand your sense of awareness through who knows what kind of any sort of practice. For those of us in modern Western culture, that often comes through mind body practices like yoga, meditation. Maybe we try some psychedelics, but we have certain experiences where our awareness seems to expand beyond just the I, and then we start to notice, oh, this consciousness, this sense that we exist may not be confined just to this light that's flickering inside of this body. I personally have had a lot of those experiences, and I know a lot of other people who've had those experiences, and a lot of us are coming to the conclusion that consciousness is not limited to a little light flickering inside of this body.
Here, here. Please don't ask me what do you think the nature of consciousness is or to define it because I don't I don't have a very good answer for that.
I can't
Uh,
volley that back at you.
well, you can volley a lot of things back at me, but please don't do that one.
Well, let me just try this. So it just took me, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes to even venture a term definition. Are there any parts of that definition that either don't make sense to you or that you would like to quibble with or add to?
No. The thing that I hear the most is being a conscious entity. There's something that it's like to be that entity. There's something that it's like to be a bat, which is a classical case, or a human. I'm having a human experience right now. At least I think I am. But I'm also having a Joel Zaslofsky experience. So to me, that's where like the fractal or layers of consciousness kind of go on there. And as you go up, identity is removed and any sense of Joelness is removed. Like as we go up to the cosmic scale of consciousness. And this is where it's really hard because I talk about so many different things with so many different people. This particular concept and topic is something where words just very quickly fail to address. And maybe it's because I'm inadequate when it comes to my vocabulary or my learnings. But consciousness and the nature of consciousness is just something that really defies words to me. Like if we could energetically communicate about consciousness, that seems so much more appropriate. But of course, we're recording something, and all we have to communicate right now, at least, is our words. So it's just a very crude form of communication when we're talking about something like consciousness.
Yep. Crude form of communication is it. What I say to a lot of my friends when we get into these deep, expansive topics is words are hard.
Yeah.
And the English language was not born from a context in which we, have a deep or complex understanding of the different levels of awareness. But I do want to say I really like your example of a bat, right? There's an experience of batness. There's an experience of dogness, and there's an experience of Joelness. And I think that's an important layer of the definition, right? If we think of some of the ancient traditions that I like to study will relate consciousness more to a flame, and it's like a power source, right? And different types of beings can plug into or benefit from or manifest out of that main power source. And so that power of consciousness or that flame of consciousness can alight many things. And so it can manifest in so many different ways. And Joel is just one manifestation, and Rosie, your dog, is just one manifestation.
Is there a source of power beyond consciousness or other than consciousness?
Hmm.
Like an enlivening force and energy. Again, words are hard. But do you know of, from anything from your PhD program or studying ancient traditions, do you know of any other source of spark of light that is other than consciousness?
So this again becomes sort of splitting hairs etymologically. Again, as humans, we have this impossible task of trying to put words to things. And when you put words on things and define them, you got to draw boundaries. And what I've noticed studying ancient traditions of various sorts is that they draw these chains of logic back to the source energy. And some of them will say, well, there's this one that elemental source of energy, and then it, like you say, it fractals downward, and then you get the consciousness of a living biological being. But there are steps before it becomes that. There are refinements or lack, or the opposite of refinement, which would be like they make the distinction sometimes between gross and subtle. Right? The most subtle energy is this pure energy or pure life force or pure consciousness. And as it slowly filters its way down into material reality, it goes through a process of becoming more coarse, basically. And so is the consciousness we experience a level of coarseness that is separate from the source energy? Or is it just a derivative? I don't know. Is it a different thing or just a different manifestation? So I don't know.
All right, you're not here to make any definitive statements about that, which is cool. Maybe we can go to some place where words are maybe a little bit easy. I know intuition is a big thing with you and me as well. I've really been trying to develop this thing that we call intuition. I'm not going to ask you to necessarily define every single new word that comes up in our conversation, but what I'm looking for, maybe as a point before, is there some way that intuition and consciousness are intertwined, or what is, tell me what you're thinking of as you reflect on intuition, independent of
Sure.
or tied to consciousness?
Okay, I'll tell you what, if you're going to free me from the need to define my terms super clearly, this will just
Sure, why
liberate
not?
the entire conversation.
Okay, great.
Okay. So, from my experience and understanding, our consciousness is tied to something outside of our bodies. It's coming from somewhere. Let's just, for the sake of this discussion, let's just call it source. Okay. What that means is we have the ability to tune our awareness to different levels. At the most coarse level, right, we're totally in our bodies, we're attached to the earth, and we're very task focused on things like recording a podcast, having a conversation with this person right in front of us. But we also have the ability, because this source consciousness is flowing through us. We can think of ourselves as just little spokes on this giant wheel. And if we can tune our bodies and tune our wavelength and our rhythm up a little bit, we can start to expand the awareness to a more ethereal level. And what that means is we can start to use other ways of knowing. And those ways of knowing can expand a little bit beyond our bodies. Here's a really grounded example that I think everybody can understand. You're sitting in a room with another person, and instead of talking, you decide that you're both just going to get really quiet. And then after 5 minutes of being quiet, your body settles down, your nervous system settles down, and then maybe you were even meditating, and then you open your eyes, and somehow you sense the other person is feeling a little bit tired. And you didn't notice that before. What changed? That's an open question to you, Joel.
Was I there?
Sorry.
Did that happen? Was I involved? I'm not sure what changed in that scenario. But I get the scenario that you're in. I have done something. I've done group, like spontaneous group meditation at dinner before. And 100% of the time, I'm the one who suggests it. Even with good friends, I'm like, what would be really fun right now? Let's just not say anything for 5 minutes and meditate or breathe or whatever it is, and see what happens. So I've been in a similar scenario. Nothing necessarily happens. Nothing special has opened for me in the past. So one of the reasons why I bring this up, and one of the things that I've loved talking about you over the years, is you just gave a very practical thing that almost everyone can say, okay, I kind of know what that's like, or I've done that before. I'm interested in just a brief idea. What's on the menu to know? You use the word a different way of knowing. What's on the menu of knowing when you become more intuitive that you don't think most humans have ever thought is possible or haven't experienced firsthand?
Okay. I'll give you another really concrete example. A few years ago, I woke up about 3 in the morning, just kind of shot up in bed, and I was having this vision, sort of like a waking dream. And I saw this friend of mine, and then I saw mm, a young lady, maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, very feisty young gal, very very like prominent energy. And I'm asking, who is this child that I'm seeing? And the sense I got was that it was the daughter of this friend of mine. Now here's the problem, Joel. This friend of mine didn't have a daughter.
Oh.
She had a 2-year-old boy and no other children. And I had a very strong sense that I was being shown her second child.
Mm.
And just to be clear, stuff like this had been happening for a while, so I understood what was happening. This wasn't totally disturbing to me. So the next day, I saw her in the yoga studio. I just kind of casually said, "Hey, are you and your husband thinking about having another child?" And she's kind of, "Oh no, man, our boy he's a handful. We're not thinking about that right now." I said, "Huh, okay." A year and a half, 2 years later, I saw her again near the yoga studio, and she seemed like she was having a tough day. And I just said, "Hey, is everything okay?" She said, "Well, just going through some morning sickness. I'm pregnant again." And I got that buzz of knowing. For me, intuitive knowing often shows up as kind of somatic experiences in my body. That's one of the ways it shows up for me. And I just kind of knew, oh, this was the girl I saw. And so a few months later, a few weeks later, I don't remember exactly, she ended up telling all of us that it was a girl. And all of the all of the senses I had about how fiery and feisty this young lady's energy were showing up in her pregnancy. Like, she was having her morning sickness was volumes worse than it was with her first child. And then she had told me what her due date was. And I said, "There's no way the kid's going to make it. This kid's going to be born way early. She's hyperactive. She's not going
She's
to wake
ready to
up."
be in the world.
Yeah, she's not going to
Yeah.
have that kind of patience. And sure enough, the kid was about 5 weeks early.
Mm.
So that's a pretty, that's a, it's a pretty dramatic example. And I can't tell you exactly how that works. What I can tell you is that when you learn to expand your awareness beyond this like very grounded level, your body can start to act like an antenna, and it can receive information from a lot more sources than you're used to.
The antenna. I like that mental imagery that you have that can pick up different things from different sources. And part of me is wondering, because I don't really have that antenna right now, yet I hope is the appropriate word, because I'm both actively and passively trying to be more resonant and
Yeah.
be able to tune into more things. As somebody who can, I'm wondering about the difference between reactive and active, like turning the antenna on because you want it to be on, you're seeking versus you're receiving.
Mm.
Does it work in a similar way for you, at least, when it comes to your intuition, when you're going out either for yourself or on behalf of somebody else, versus when you're ready for? I've heard people use words like the downloads, or I don't know what terminology you use. So to to sum that up again, because I rambled a little bit there, is reactive and active intuition. How do they work for you? And
So when I say an antenna, what I mean is whatever pure consciousness is, however it operates, we still live in bodies. So everything we do has to come in some way. It lives inside of our bodies. Even if I were capable of reaching, let's just say, just to use kind of a silly image, like stick my finger up in the air to the source and just download all of the information, I still have to, it still has to come through my body somehow. And so we have these physical things. And so it's either got to show up, information has to either show up as a feeling or a thought or an image or a sound. It has to come through our senses at some point. It has to like ground itself down here for us to make sense of it inside of our bodies and then be able to tell somebody, oh, I saw your future daughter that you haven't conceived yet.
Mhm.
It still has to show up in my like you were saying, my experience of justness. It's got to show up in there as an image and a set of feelings. And so to tap into one's intuition, the first step is being able to tap into your own body, period. You have to start refining your awareness of what's going on in your experience of justness or joelness. And you need to know the difference between a subtle download of information and I'm hungry or I'm scared, right? So you have to be able to discern between those two things. And that discernment is really an act of listening. And that is why mind body practices, again, just to name something that's very common around here, are a really good way to train yourself. Because mind body practices are nothing other than learning how to listen at the end of the day, right? It's awareness training.
Nothing but learning how to listen at the end of the day. I'm aware that to me, this is counterintuitive. I thought that there may be a point in human evolution where I could essentially upload myself to the matrix, where my physical Joelness would be gone, but all other things that define me as Joel would still be there. And from the way that I hear you say it, like my ability to have intuition would disappear when my body disappears. If I don't have something to ground, if I don't have something to feel with biologically, then intuition goes poof.
Oh, I mean, no, I wouldn't say that.
No.
No, that's just the reality of being a human being right now, is that you're in a body. So if you want to sense anything, you have to use your body. Okay, let's just say, so something, you may have heard the term mediumship or medium work.
I have, but this is where I'm going to say define your term a little bit because I don't think most people have.
All right. So generally speaking, it refers to being able to communicate with dead people, if I can be really crass, uh, i.e. communicating with people who are no longer inside of Earth bodies, right? So theoretically, right, let's say, my Earth life ended tomorrow, right? No longer have an Earth body, going back to source. From that position, if I have something, let's just for the sake of this discussion, let's just say there's an energetic soul or something, right? No longer in the body, just reconnecting to source, going home. Once there, it's like plugging right back into the internet. I have access to all the information directly, just like you're saying. So there's no complication. And a lot of intuitives will tell you time is different over there, information is different over there. It's all there. It's all connected. And so people who are very connected or attuned or plugged in on body side are just very good at accessing that level of information. But in order to communicate that information to other people, in order to like make sense of it, you got to make sense of it through the body, because this is just the meat suit you're walking around in, and it's all you got.
Mm.
Like even if you can, if I went into the deepest meditative zone and I was way off in the astral plane, learning all this amazing stuff, I could absorb that in my body. But in order to like bring it down to earth and communicate it to you, it's still got to come through my body to turn it into earth language, right? I can't tell you, I can't speak to you in astral language.
You can't, or humans can't? Do you know people who can?
There are people who are highly, highly attuned, who are probably capable of communicating, if they know each other, with each other on energetic planes.
Hmm.
I want to emphasize this pretty strongly. Sometimes when you start going down these rabbit holes with people, there's this wish that, man, I just want to, there's almost an escapist wish I don't like being in this heavy, muddy, earthy existence. I kind of want to just go hang out in the astral plane or on the energetic plane. And it's important to realize that we're not one or the other. It's not like a choice. That being a living thing is being a hybrid being, and that's a beautiful thing. It's not a choice to be one or the other. We get to be these animated hybrid things that are part infinite life force and part beautiful, earthly, impermanent, changing, roiling material. And that's a really cool experience. And it's not a one versus the other kind of thing.
Get to be, not have to be. I
Yeah.
understand the distinction.
Yeah, this is the thing that's hard to separate. Life on Earth, like just this whole thing, this whole gigantic, amazing terrarium we live on, is a hybrid project of the life force and the raw material of the cosmos. That's what the whole thing is. And that's amazing. And that's whatever the life force is, that's what it's here to do. Before the Big Bang, it was total unity. And it was effing boring. Nothing was happening. Right? Total unity, total oneness, total peace and tranquility is boring. And in the handful of opportunities I've had to ask, whether it is in my own deep state of connection or to ask somebody else who has a great deal of experience and wisdom, what does source or God or whatever, what does that source energy want? What it wants is to become. What it wants is to manifest in all these crazy, inventive, beautiful, creative ways. Earth is one of those ways. The Big Bang had to bang so that things could happen. And so things are happening. And now we have atoms and molecules and all these raw materials, and then they can be animated with life force, and you can get frogs and cockroaches and trees and dogs and bats and humans.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was pondering for a brief moment between the source and the material world as a project to use. And I was about to ask, well, who's the project manager? Every project has a project manager. But you did answer that. You got there. So kudos to you. Anticipating. All right, this is an issue that I have based on my corporate days as a project manager. Is whenever I hear the word project, I'm like, okay, well, something is generally managing or overseeing a project, but you went there. So kudos to you.
And if you'd like me to go further down that rabbit hole, I don't know if I can do it justice.
No, that's cool.
Okay.
I'm good. Where are we going, by the way? How's this? We're wandering our way through conversation here. What's been coming up for you as we've been talking?
Well, I'm curious if I've answered your question about intuition.
I think so.
Okay. Well, so you asked me about doing it intentionally versus just having it passively happen. Is that my understanding?
Passive.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, it's really important to ultimately be able to discern between things that are just happening inside of my body, my internal reactions, and being the antenna and sensing something that might be coming from outside of my body. That takes a lot of practice, being able to discern between a gross signal and a subtle signal. And that's where a lot of mind-body practice comes in. In terms of intentional versus unintentional, that's tricky too, because the intent, let's just say you were a client of mine and you came to me and you said, Justin, I'm trying to figure out my purpose in life and I'm wondering if I should move out of my house. Totally reasonable, practical question. One thing I have to be able to separate is what my Justin brain thinks from what is out there. What is coming? What does your soul want? What are your spirit guides trying to tell me? What is I don't know, what are the forces of the earth trying to tell me? And so my intent is actually to quiet the Justin noise and then turn on the antenna to receive. So it's effort and action, to shift my mode, but that mode is receptive and setting very clear boundaries on what is allowed into my microphone or my headphones and what is not. So for me, that does require intent. I have a busy mind naturally, and I spent a lot of my life learning how to tune out the outside world and tune out my own feelings and my own somatic sensations. So basically numbing myself. I mean, I was an athlete for a lot of my life, so you learn.
Numbing? Really? That's the word that seems appropriate, where you just need to turn off as much of your ability to sense and feel so that you can tap into what's beyond you?
What I'm saying is, when I was playing sports and I was doing something very high intensity, I had to turn off a lot of my sensitivity in order to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I learned that skill pretty deeply, which is a good skill. Sometimes you have to go out and operate in the world, and the world is loud and scary and intense, and you have to wall yourself off. And that was one of the first skills I learned growing up. So when I got older and then learned that walling myself off was not a good way to go through life, I had to reverse engineer that and learn how to listen and how to open myself up and receive.
Hmm.
There are a lot of people, a lot of gifted intuitives who they have just always been naturally open. And so setting boundaries is more the challenge for them, and discerning is more the challenge for them. So it's different for everybody, but the discernment skill is necessary for everyone.
I think it'd be a lot of fun to put you in very specific scenarios beyond a thought experiment. If I could just conjure up something and be like, okay, Justin, go. You're on a roller coaster and you're about to go down at 100 miles an hour. Game 7 of the Pistons championship series. Have you ever wanted to do this with any of your friends or family? Like, put them in a situation and see, like, generally how they react or interact or what they want to do. And then you put them into some scenario and be like, okay, this seems really fun. I would love to understand what you do in this scenario.
So you want to understand what I'm going to do when the Pistons win Game 7?
No, I don't need to do that. This is part verbal thought experiment that I was doing in real time that failed. Uh, What I guess I wanted to know even more is before before you hopped on Zoom with me, I was listening to what I call medicine music. This is something that I've gotten into, especially in the last 6 to 9 months or so. There's whether it's plant-based or fungus-based medicine, around the world of psychedelics, there's something that I've come to know as medicine music. There's a group, White Arrow, and I was listening to a song called Tribus, which, oh man, it does it for me in so many different ways. Your ability to tune in or tune out. I know I recently learned this about you. I don't know how I went so long about how music is such a fundamental part of your life.
Hmm.
How does music aid you in being either the fleshy bag of water that you want to be or operating beyond that?
That's a good question. Music is a tool, and it can do a lot of different things. So if I want to get distracted, right, I can throw on something loud, right? If there's a certain emotion I want to move, you use music as inspiration for that. If I want to get work done, I can turn on something mellow. So our our bodies and nervous systems have a long relationship with sound, which I'm sure you're well aware of.
Hmm.
And I felt that from a young age, that music was a pretty kick-ass tool for cultivating whatever kind of conscious experience I want. Now, what's really fascinating about music is the long history that humans have with using sound and rhythm to alter our consciousness. There is something about our nervous systems that responds to rhythmic sound. And almost every land-based indigenous culture which has ever been discovered has the handful of things in common. Number one, they use some combination of breathing and sound to shift their state of awareness and expand their awareness. Now, that's pretty effing cool if you think about it. It's not always what we would consider music. It could be chanting, right? It could just be some sort of rhythmic drumming type thing. They could have some sort of instruments. It could just be voice work. Um, Doing that rhythmic movement, combining it with rhythmic movement with the body, which today we might call dancing,
Hmm.
and some combination of those things leads to rhythmic breathing and intensified breathing also. And people use that to shift their consciousness. And we still do it today. It's wild. No matter what culture you go to anywhere in the world, there's going to be some version of that. Now, we've retained the music, but we haven't necessarily retained the traditions of combining that music with movement, breathing, chanting, whatever, to elevate our consciousness. But anyone who listens to music and really loves it knows that there's something to that, right? And when's the last time you went to a really good concert?
I generally don't do live music. I've been
Okay.
to 1.5 live concerts in my entire life.
Okay. Well, but even like a marching band, like the Wisconsin marching band,
Oh,
that
sure.
something happens that everybody on earth is well aware of when a group of people get together and sing together, move together, dance together to a rhythmic beat or some sort of rhythmic sound. Your consciousness does start to expand a little.
Hmm.
You start to feel less like just Joel and more like part of something bigger. And that's just that first level of consciousness expansion. And it's happening when you go to a concert, when you go to a football game, and you're rocking with the marching band.
Yeah.
There's there's a there's a deep wiring between sound and vibration and rhythm in our nervous systems that is like it's like a key into a lock that starts to shift our awareness in out of that separate individual mode and into that first level of collective awareness or expanded awareness.
Hmm. Mm.
And you can even, and like you observed, you can even do it by yourself. There's certain music will even start to shift your consciousness individually if you just let yourself get immersed in it, right?
I've, w- I've wondered about the difference between listening to music on a speaker versus with headphones. It's a very different experience. It's the same thing, but your ability to sense when the music is just being piped directly into your ears, as opposed to say 5 feet or 10 feet or 20 feet away from a speaker. Biologically or evolutionary, I haven't done any research into it, but it's so wild how it's such a different experience. If I'm in the middle of a drum circle versus if I have a similar experience of drums, but I'm listening to it on a pair of headphones. Do you know any of the science behind sound or vibration or frequency and how close to the ears, the ability to perceive it, and how that impacts things?
No, I don't know any of that science. I'm curious what you perceive as the difference.
You can you can pick up things, and maybe this is because I'm insensitive in some ways. I joke, and my family knows this to be true, that I am generally environmentally insensitive. The things that other people pick up, smells, I have just total crap smelling, which is really useful when there's some biological thing that happened in my house, whether it's human or dog related. I am the one who gets sent in to deal with that because I don't really smell it. And there's subtle things with music, whether it's harmony or some kind of instrument that's just intentionally laid when the track was laid down at a much lower decibel rate. And then I put on my headphones. I'm like, what the? Whoa! I had no idea that that was part of it too. I didn't have any ability to pick it up. So this is what I'm trying to explain. Just my default way of being, which is I don't when I look at this, and this applies seemingly to all of my senses as well. Like when I look around, I try to be really laser focused. And I think part of this is because over time I've tried to get more and more present. And to me, the fact of being present, especially with other humans, means narrowing my senses and narrowing my focus down almost to what is literally in front of me and not necessarily being able to hear my children say something in a room over until they get right in my face and like, Papa, I'm talking to you. And I had no idea that anybody was talking to me.
Hmm. Okay. So it sounds to me like so here's a little crude kind of scientific description of attention. Uh, Attention has multiple factors. One of them is attentional capacity. So your ability to default just notice a lot of stimulus at the same time, right? And it sounds like you might have high attentional capacity
I
that
would
you're
say I
able
have
to.
low
You think you
attentional
have?
capacity.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna keep just 1 second. I'm gonna keep
Okay, you
going.
keep going. Yep, yep.
So the one of the other dials is focus.
Hmm.
So you might be the kind of person who can get distracted because you notice a lot of things. But if you have a strong focus dial, you can take your attention and go like that,
Hmm.
so that you tune out a lot of other things and you don't hear the person in the other room. But it's an intentional act for you. And so unless somebody puts the headphones on you, right? Then and only then, with other things blocked out, can you pick up all of the different things happening in the music. So you have the capacity to notice a lot of different things in the music, but you need to turn the dial
Mm, that's fair.
and narrow your field. Because there are some people who even if they put the headphones on, they're not going to notice the 8 different things happening inside the song. They're going to pick 1 or 2 things and focus on those things. So it sounds to me like you have learned over the years that if you don't intentionally narrow your focus, it's going to be all over the place. It's going to be all out here. Is that accurate?
Now I don't know. That makes sense, and now I need to reevaluate the way that I perceive the world, which I'm going to do after we're done with our conversation. I'm keeping my focus lasered in just on you right now. The rest of the world doesn't exist.
Yeah, but so I'm just saying, when I interact with you, Joel, I notice that you're really good at being present and like really focusing your attention on the person you're with, and you pick up a lot of interesting things in the conversation, reflect them back. So to me, that says like you're holding a lot in your working memory, and you're really attending to a lot of different things in your zone of focus,
Hmm.
which says to me you got a pretty good attentional capacity and you have a good dial for really honing it in and like putting some walls up so that you're all engaged right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it when you get sciencey with me. What are other components of attention? You've talked about 2. How many are there?
I don't know how many there are.
Okay,
Uh,
they're more than 2.
well, so those are 2 big dials. It's also possible to talk about how different senses affect you. Um, like some people are more sensitive to their inner somatic world. Some people are more sensitive to their outer world. Uh, some people have the ability to pick up very, very small, um, very low level stimuli, right? Some people, like you were talking about smell, for instance, that's a dimension, right? Like your smell is like an insensitive sense for you. And maybe that's all of your senses, right? Like some people pick up very minute smells. You do not.
Yeah, poop's no problem.
Right. So so sensitivity is another one of those dials. And that can apply differently across different senses. But that's a really cool ability that you got, Joel. So whenever something awful and smelly happens at my place, I'm calling you.
All right. All right. It better be really good, but I am willing to do it for you. You are a good enough
Yeah.
friend that if something sufficiently stinky happens and you need someone to deal with it, I will do that for you.
Hmm. Now, another interesting thing is, and this ties back to our conversation about consciousness, is these different attention is the tool that can be trained. That's what's really cool. So if you're looking to expand your awareness, attention is the tool you can start to use, right? You can by practicing, you can dial up your sensitivity. Like if you actually wanted to train your smell to get better, you could do that. If you wanted to train your hearing or your somatic awareness to get better, you could practice that, because it's all really just a function of your nervous system and the power of certain, brain networks to be active and picking up information. There's sensory information coming at us from all directions all the time. And basically, our senses and our brains are giant gates that keep most of the crap out of our conscious awareness. And through practice, and that's where things like meditation come in, things like mindful applications of our senses come in, is we can start to signal to our nervous systems, hey, we're going to try to strengthen our ability to pick up that information. We're going to tune in way more to sound.
Mm.
So if you listen to a ton of music and you put on your headphones, you're going to get better over time at picking up the subtleties of that sound. The network in your brain that is responsible for processing, identifying, labeling, and discerning different sounds is going to get stronger and better.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how over time we can actually start to alter our awareness.
You don't even have to do anything. It just happens.
Well, it starts with directing effort, right?
Okay.
That's the thing. So, I mean, theoretically you could, right? If you just like,
If I just rocked out with headphones on for 12 hours a day, then I'm going to have some different capacity or focus abilities.
yeah. And likewise, if you just moved out to a very rural area, spent way more time with nature sounds,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your senses would attune more to the sounds of nature. You know, we live in the city and we're surrounded by cars and concrete all day, so our senses get very dulled.
That does sound lovely.
So you're right. There are some environmental factors you can just kind of throw at your body.
Yeah.
But in terms of intentionally expanding one's awareness, picking up, becoming more intuitive, which is, kind of how we started this conversation, that takes, especially because we are in these overwhelming sensory environments as urban Western humans, it does take some pretty focused training to develop those faculties.
Mm-hmm. And I put myself in those overwhelming environments relationally. I have so many amazing friends all around the world, and I'm so extroverted that I'm just constantly looking for human input, and I'm not necessarily giving myself the opportunity to experience other things because I'm always seeking out rad humans to do rad stuff with. Interesting.
That's not a bad thing, though. I mean, relational connection is not a bad way to tune your awareness. At least it's certainly not an unhealthy way, you know?
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm not trying to point out a deficiency here. I'm just trying to. I'm a verbal processor. Sometimes I don't have realizations until I hear it come out of my mouth. I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes some sense.
Yeah.
Mm. So, what are you processing right now? Are you, based on the conversation that we've had so far, or maybe earlier in your day? I'm just wondering, what are some of the overarching themes or questions that you've been pondering or challenged by?
So here's kind of a big one. Because I've been going down this rabbit hole of awareness and connection and consciousness for going on 15 years now, I've spent a lot of the last few years kind of asking, like, why? What's the point? Like, this is obviously a topic you've gotten really curious about, Joel.
Yes.
You're interested in expanding your consciousness. So, do you mind if I just ask you why it's an intriguing avenue for you?
I feel, despite what you told me before about the body has to have some experience in order to translate something beyond it to our human experience, I often feel limited by my human senses. And I know being the appropriate word now, after having some experiences that have broadened my perception of consciousness, my connectedness to everyone and everything on this world and in the universe. There's so much more to experience beyond my default way of being human. And I didn't know what was possible or what was on the menu. That's why I asked you that question earlier, like, what's on the menu of knowing for you? And I am very interested in knowing, even if I don't necessarily, whatever Joelness this is, experiencing it firsthand, like being able to observe from a distance and know, like, ooh, that's something that could be known. That's something that could be aware that I could be aware of. That's probably the primary thing, is just opening myself up to possibilities and knowing that I otherwise wouldn't or couldn't.
Yeah, okay. So, this is a sentiment I hear a lot. And you said a word that I think is really useful to as kind of a jumping off point here. You said, I feel like my human experience is limited. Is that what you said?
Limiting.
Limiting.
I am very, very grateful for very, very many things. And it also feels limiting often.
So I completely agree with you, except to say that what's limiting is not the human experience. It's the way we were raised in this culture that's limiting. We are not as, and again, I'm making a pretty big generalization here, but I'm talking about modern Western and especially American people. We have narrowed and limited the human experience more than any humans that have ever lived in the history of Earth.
Yeah.
That is the limitation that you are experiencing. I'm just going to say that. And you are not alone. A lot of people who have grown up the way we have this sort of, I reference this a lot, but the film The Matrix, familiar with it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
The
okay.
Matrix Reloaded, the second one. Oh, that's in my top 5 all-time favorite movies.
Right. But like the Alice in Wonderland aspect of the first one, where at the beginning, Neo is meeting Morpheus and he's like, something is wrong with your reality. Like you can feel it, you can taste it, you just can't put a finger on what the hell it is. I think that's, for me, that's always been the experience of growing up in like the suburbs of a major city in America.
Mm-hmm.
Something is not right here. Something about my experience feels so limiting and so wrong, and I have no goddamn idea what it is. And as soon as you get little tastes here and there, you're like, wait, there's more. Wait, there's more. You go to another country. I remember when I was 19, I went to South America for the first time. I just happened to have a buddy who was Brazilian. And I witnessed a completely different way of being with other human beings, way more collective culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a completely different feeling. And I was like, whoa, we are so individualized and atomized and separate from each other. And we are missing out on so much joy and connection. What the hell are we doing in America? Tip of the iceberg, right? And the truth is, and eventually, you experience the things that we experience in this culture. You experience restlessness and lack of purpose and disconnection. And maybe you get some anxiety and some depression. I mean, we have all kinds of stuff, something doesn't feel right after a while when you're churning your way through this modern, Western, weird capitalist world. And I'm not, this is not a lecture on capitalism. I'm not even going there, but
That's okay. I don't need it. I think I already get it.
yeah. But we are the most atomized and separated, disconnected culture that has ever existed on the entire planet in the history of living things. And
that statement feels very true. And
my response to that as I came of age was I felt I didn't feel well, and I stumbled my way into meditation, as a lot of people do these days. But that was the first time I connected deeply through my body to myself, and I recognized that this shell of ego and the conception of self that I had was not the whole picture. As you say, it was extremely limiting and there was more. And it connected the dots for me to experiences I had had when I was in my early 20s with psychedelics, also with sort of expanded states of awareness. And it was just very validating. I was like, oh, this experience I've been taught is so limiting. I am not. What's the speech from Fight Club? You are not your khakis.
Oh,
You
I
are
don't
not.
know that movie well enough.
You are not your job anyway.
You are not your khakis.
But
Yeah.
we're not. But we're raised in this. It's about your job. It's about your roles. It's about the things you do outside of your body. We live our lives way out in front, in the future, in the past, in our tasks, in our roles. But that's such a limiting understanding of who we are. And as soon as you get into some of these ancient practices, or who knows, or you go to a concert, or you're at a football game, as soon as you have any expanded sense of self, you go, oh, wow, that's really intriguing. There's a lot more there. And it's because there is. And if you spend 10 minutes getting to know what other cultures have known for thousands and thousands of years, you realize how limiting this experience is.
Yeah.
And so what I've come to understand is there are 3 specific ways in which we have disconnected ourselves that are causing all of these feelings. We have disconnected from ourselves and our bodies. We have disconnected relationally from other human beings. Community is a big part of who we are. We are supposed to be communal creatures. We are supposed to have shared consciousness with other humans. And we are disconnected from the living natural world. The land, the animals, the water, the air, everything. We are children of the living world, and our bodies and our community are part of that connective tissue, and we have systematically disconnected ourselves from all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I call the 3 disconnections. And when you get intrigued about a psychedelic journey, or you get enamored with the idea of building greater community, or you get into an individualized mind-body practice, or you feel a deep connection with music, one way or another, you are starting to reconnect at one of those 3 critical junctures. And that's why it feels good. And it feels enlivening, because it's what we were born to be. So I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but
Didn't sound
this
like a
is
rant to me.
okay.
Sound like you were breaking it down for me, brother.
These are one way to think of them, the self and the body, relationships with other human beings, and relationship with the greater living world. They're like churches you can attend. And if you go to those churches and you immerse yourself for 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, you will start to feel more human and more like yourself and more well and more connected and more whole. And you can think of them like a tripod. If you build your connection in all 3 of those churches, it's like a tripod that starts to reconnect you to the life force itself.
Mm.
Because this is the tripod of being a living thing. Being deeply connected to yourself and your body, being deeply connected to your community, your cohort, your people, and being deeply connected to your land and your living biome.
Yeah.
When those things are happening, when you're rebuilding those relationships, there's no mystery about what the source is or what the life force is. It's just right in front of you. You're experiencing it all the time. And this is what all of our ancestors knew. Hundreds of thousands of years. This was not even a question. Nobody was sitting around 100,000 years ago going, what is my purpose?
Hmm.
Why am I so anxious and restless? Nobody was thinking that.
Yeah.
Nobody was going to their psychiatrist. Nobody was doing a podcast saying, what is consciousness?
Too bad for them. But yes, I understand how that could be a wonderful way of being. I'm really glad that you have language. Words are getting easier as the conversation goes on. That some of this tripod of churches and connecting to source. I like that. Your analogies, your metaphors, the mental imagery that you've been able to paint is really working for me the more that we get to know each other. And I know this goes into your role as a light worker and as at least a reluctant light worker. By the way, for those of you, which what I would imagine would be almost everyone listening who doesn't know that you have a podcast, the reluctant light worker. Pretty groovy. I know you're, at least at this point in time when we're recording right now, you're just a few episodes in, but it's already really good. And the concept of being a light worker, I I guess this is where maybe I am more intuitive than I think. The first time that I heard that word or that you said that word, I was like, I get it. And then you explained it more. I was like, yep, that's exactly what I had in mind. I'm so grateful that you're a light worker, that you fully stepped into that identity and that knowing, and that you're helping so many people with those 3 sources of disconnection and helping them become a sense of connection instead.
Yeah. And as long as you're not asking me to clearly define my terms academically,
No, I'm not.
I'm happy to do that. And
You don't have to define anything.
yeah, it would speaking in you're right in that speaking in metaphors uh works a lot better.
That's what a good metaphor or analogy or something is. You don't have to break it down to its elemental level. You tell a story or you paint a picture and people get it.
Yeah, and that's part of the reluctance that has plagued me over the years. That I was raised in this very, linear Western science tradition. And not only that, right, got my doctorate, I'm a licensed scientist in a lot of ways. And as I was getting that training, I was also experiencing these openings to a very different way of knowing, and that dichotomy was it was challenging
Hmm.
because yeah, the our full humanity and our wholeness and our relationality does not lend itself very well to the kind of precision that writing an academic paper demands sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why, and thank you for making reference. That's why the Reluctant Lightworker exists as a podcast and as a platform.
Yeah.
There needs to be, there needs to be another outlet for that work.
Well, I have many other conversational places that we could go, either directly related to what you just said or bringing a thread, pulling on it more that we've tapped into, but I'm feeling pretty good. What about you? Is there something else that you were hoping that we might discuss that we haven't touched on?
We could go all day, Joel,
Oh, I
but
know.
I'm
Round
comfortable.
one? Just round one still?
I'm comfortable calling that round one. Yeah,
All right. Right
yeah.
on. Well, then maybe we'll talk a bit about, the good that you're doing in the world. If people want to connect with you online or offline, where is one or two places where they would go to learn more about some of the things that you've been talking about or some of the good that you're doing or just getting the Justin Baker experience?
Hmm. The simplest one-stop shop is drjustinbaker.com. And that's no punctuation, just Dr. Justin Baker, JUSTINBAKER. And that landing page will direct you to wherever you want to go, whether it's the Reluctant Lightwork, whether it's my podcast, whether it's the organizational work that I do during the day. All of it can be found right there.
Right on. You don't have to spell your name, by the way. Well, at least for most people. It's not like your last name's Zaslofsky, and you have to do Z as in zebra, A, S as in Sam. Oh, it'd be fun to be a baker sometimes. Baker,
Yeah, I've been, yeah.
as in
I
baker.
It's one of those made up Ellis Island names from the Irish side of the family. There was some other name, and they were like, you're bakers.
Yeah, they're okay. That I was about to start another conversational topic, but we're gonna leave it there. We don't have to get into the origins of naming conventions and how that's changed over time, or as we've immigrated and migrated from place to place. Yeah, that's for round two.
For round two.
Well, there you go. How was that for a doozy of a conversation? I'd like you to pause for a moment. For real, just press the pause button for a moment and ask yourself, what am I taking away from this discussion? What beliefs may be shifting, or what will I do differently as a result of listening? Yeah, that's settling in. Good. You can find links to stuff we spoke about, takeaways, and a transcript in the show notes at joelzaslofsky.com/SMJ006. If you're curious about what a Justin-facilitated psychedelic experience is like and how he helped me integrate the group journey he facilitated for me and some friends, listen to the next episode with a whole lot of, yeah, you got it, surprises. I will be back with you again to sling stories, facilitate connections, and whip up experiments to help you make friends with people, possibilities, and ideas.